What is up, everyone? I hope you're all good. I hope you're having a great day. Now, I thought I'd bring you back to see a tank that we haven't visited in a little while, and it's about 9-10 months old now, and we are having a few issues with it that hopefully we are going to rectify and fix today. Now, that tank is the Axolotl Oasis, I think I called it. Anyway, it's my Axolotl tank. Me and Katie and Quinn, I suppose, set it up about 9, maybe 10 months ago, and it's been doing really, really well. Now, axolotls being messy creatures, they like to eat, they like to go to the toilet, is probably the nicest way of putting it. They do poop a lot. And it does cause algae, it does cause problems. Now, the problem that we're suffering with in here looks like an algae, and loads of people mistake it as an algae, but it's actually not. It's what's called Cyanobacteria, or Cyanobacteria, however you want to say it, Cyanobacteria. Now, it's like a bluey green skin that grows over things. Now, until a few days ago, I only had it on the wood and the plants, and then I gave the tank a big water change, and I think I inadvertently spread it a little bit, because now we've got touches on the gravel. Yeah, there is definitely an underlying issue in this tank. Now, with cyanobacteria, it can be caused by quite a few different things, and you probably will hear me throughout this video refer to it as algae, but it's not. But it does get caused by quite a few different things. Lighting, lack of flow, lack of oxygenation, too many nutrients in the water, an imbalance of nutrients, feeding your fish too much, not enough water changes. Literally, all sorts of things can cause this problem. But I think in this tank, we have got a bit of a perfect storm going on, because I've tested the water, nitrates and phosphates, and definitely if you've got cyanobacteria, make sure you test for your phosphates, but both of those are low. They're not zero, but they're not high enough for me to be worrying about. But the problem with that, with it being a little bit high, is we have got the plant in the top that is clogging up the water, so that's stopping the water flow from actually moving around the aquarium. We've then got the big bit of bogwood that is stopping the water, again, from flowing around the aquarium. And we are in the English summer. Now, as much as the English summer doesn't mean a lot, because in all honesty, I'm looking outside now and it is grey and cloudy and raining. Yeah, it's like that all the time. I think we've had one sunny day, maybe two, but yeah, not many. Now, because of that, we've got brighter days. The days are longer, the days are brighter, so we have got light streaming into this room. Yeah, and I think it's just a perfect storm. Fish poop, well, it's not fish poop, is it? It's axolotl poop, amphibian poop. A lack of water flow, too much light, yeah, so on and so on. I think it's just a little bit of everything, but we are going to fix it today. Now, I have just been sent a Fluval SK400 skimmer. It's one of Fluval's new skimmers, so I thought what better opportunity than to try it out on this aquarium, see if we can get a bit of extra flow going around in there, give the tank a bit of a clean, give you all an update on how it's doing. It's probably the muckiest tank in the house because, well, axolotls, you can't keep cleanup crew with them. You'll see a few people risking it online, but shrimps are going to be lunch. Any big catfish are going to possibly cause problems with the axolotls. And then anything smaller, the axolotls are probably going to try and eat. You'll see people risk it online. Personally, for me, I just keep them on their own. It's better to be safe than sorry. I do not want a spiky catfish lodged in the back of an axolotl's mouth. First step is probably to give it a good water change and actually remove some of this vallus, because some of it's like, I don't know, probably about 5 foot, 6 foot long. So we do need to get some of that. So yeah, anyway, let's get started. Now, the first step in trying to defeat this cyanobacteria, now looking, it is majority cyanobacteria and not algae. Oh, also, do you like my new bit of bogwood? Look at that. Just picked that one up on a recent road trip, so that was quite cool. So yeah, loads of people normally mistake cyanobacteria for algae. And in fact, it's not. It's, well, essentially photosynthetic bacteria. So that's why it's got the green coloration, is because it uses light as a food source. And yeah, causes this weird, thick, sort of scummy horribleness to grow. So I'm going to go through, give this tank a good water change, and hopefully a good brush down so I can siphon out a lot of this cyanobacteria. So for the first step on this horrible fight against this cyanobacteria is going to be to give this tank a good water change. Now, I have tested the water, and it's not looking overly bad. There is a little bit of nitrate, but nothing major. So I think it is a combination of nutrients and sunlight that is just sort of, well, causing the perfect storm for this cyanobacteria to grow. Now, the other things that can cause cyanobacteria to grow is essentially an imbalance in sort of nutrients, so where we might have a lot of phosphate and nitrate, and that's going to be fairly common in an axolotl tank because they do like to eat and they do like to go to the toilet. So it wouldn't surprise me that most tanks with axolotls in can suffer with this quite easily, just because of the amount of waste that is in there. And because it's colder, you don't often get the plant growth that you would have in a tropical aquarium. So they do sort of end up having those nutrients build up sometimes. Now, the other thing that I think this tank might be suffering with is, as I've said already, a little bit of poor circulation. Now, the Fluval 307 that is on this tank has only been cleaned recently and has got a decent flow to it. The problem being is it's got a lot of wood and a lot of plants to push that water around, and I think it's just ending up with a few slower moving spots that possibly aren't getting cleaned, and then you're getting pockets of nutrients where the cyanobacteria can take hold. So I've stopped there for the minute just so I can give the tank a quick wipe down, and hopefully that will get rid of anything, because really you should wipe a tank down and get all the muck off of the glass before you're siphoning, or at least, you know, the amount of muck that you want to get off the glass. I don't mind this tank being a bit more natural because ultimately, yes, I want it to look nice, but you keep axolotls for their character. You don't keep them really to make their tank look like some award-winning aquascape. So yeah, as much as I want it clean, I don't mind it looking a bit natural. That's my excuse anyway, and I'm sticking to it. Now, the other thing that can cause cyanobacteria is excess nutrients in the substrate. But the good thing with this tank is I only put a thin layer of sand right at the bottom, so there's not many places for the sort of nutrients to build up. I have got some bigger areas with some, plant substrates in the back, underneath this big island of Vallis and underneath this island of Vallis. But that's all locked in, and the Vallises should be using that up really well as a nutrient source, so I don't think that's going to be our problem. So I think it's probably just a combination of 3 or 4 things. It's probably too much poop from the axolotls, maybe a little bit too much light with the sunlight now coming in through the front window, and I've obviously got 2 lights on this shaker. Even though I run them on lower lighting levels, it is still quite a bit of light. And then I think the last thing is a lack of flow, because, well, just look at all of this Vallis that's growing in there, which I think, after we've water changed, is the next thing we need to sort out. Now, whilst the water is drained, I'm hoping that I can sort out this Vallis at least a little bit, because, well, yeah, look, that's a short one, and it nearly touches the bottom of the cabinet. Some of these are really long, so I'm going to pull all of these out and try and maybe tidy them up a little bit. Now, all I'm going to be doing is trying to sort out the horrible algae infested ones, or cyanobacteria infested ones, and some with breaks in them, and, well, essentially any that don't look 100%, pulling those ones out and getting rid of them, and then just leaving, hopefully, the good ones. So I've just thinned out all the Vallis, and I am so glad I'd done this when Katie wasn't home, because, yeah, I sort of just used the floor. So, yeah, I better get that mopped, because, yeah, she's not going to like that. It does smell a bit sort of planty in here now. But, yeah, now that that's all thinned out, hopefully that's going to give us a little bit more air and a little bit of movement, a little bit more room for the water to flow around, especially once we add that skimmer to it in a bit. Our next step is to get this one topped back up so that it's full, and then we can unbox our skimmer while this one's topping up. First, I should probably clean up quickly, so I think I'll do that, then we'll fill up. If you're wondering how I trimmed this back, in all honesty, with Vallis, I just sort of pull it. You'll find that the bits that break, whether you cut them or break them or do whatever to them, once you've cut that leaf, it's normal that that leaf will just die back very, very slowly. But I find by breaking them at random lengths, you end up with that still sort of natural look to it, whereas when you go along and cut it at a straight edge, well, it just makes the aquarium look a bit weird and a bit manicured. So yeah, just literally rip it apart, pull it apart, or cut it at different lengths. That way it doesn't look so obvious that you've gone through and hacked your aquarium apart. So now we've got the water drained, we've got as much cyanobacteria out as I think possible with just a siphon tube. We are now going to start the top-up process. So the good thing with axolotls is they don't mind it cold or cool. So I'm just going to top this up from the hose pipe as I normally do. With all my tropical tanks, I don't tend to do this. I normally warm the water first. But these guys, as long as you're putting it in slowly, like I am there, they'll get on absolutely fine with it. One thing I always like to make sure is that we're dechlorinating the water, so I always use NT-Labs AxoSafe because it is the only axolotl tested and tried dechlorinator on the market. So this is the one I use. Now this treats 10 mil of this, treats 50 litres. So this tank's about 345 litres, so I reckon we're going to be probably around the 30 mil mark to get this fully treated. One more of those, well, half of one of those. Right, now we're just going to wait for this to top up. So whilst the tank is filling, let's have a quick look at this skimmer, which is hopefully going to help us fix a few of these problems. Now, as normal for most companies, got 2-year guarantee, +1 if you register it online, so that's quite cool. It's just showing us flow reducer. It looks like you've got like a, I don't know, like a cage that you can block off the sort of skimmer cup, so it stops things swimming in there. 2, I don't know, like output diffuser. Undirected or multi-directional flow. So yeah, it's got a cage around it, so it just blasts the flow around the aquarium, you know, telling you what a skimmer does, which is remove the surface and sort of jet it into the bottom of the aquarium. So it just helps it keep it clean. This is one thing actually that was interesting, is it fits around a plastic rim. So if you've got a plastic rim on your aquarium, like a Fluval Roma or even the Fluval Shaker that we're working on today, does have a few sort of plastic gizmos and gadgets around the edge that stop skimmers sitting flush. It does allow you to sort of pull it away. It's got a pump that sort of keeps it away from the edge. Now, I don't know if that's standard for most skimmers. Maybe it's standard. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, that's about it on the outside of the box. Really nothing that exciting. Now inside, instruction manual. Yeah, great. It'll be fairly simple and standard on this, I expect. Yeah, nothing too exciting. But yeah, that's your skimmer. So it all comes pretty much readily assembled. There's nothing else to do with it. So flow reducer on the front there, so you can slow it down and speed it up. The diffuser cage, does that come off? Yeah. So you can have it as just a jet if you want to, which is probably the way I'll run it. Maybe. We'll see. We'll plug it in a minute and try it. And then this, how does this work? That comes out. So that's your skimmer cup. And then this, oh, I see, it just turns. Oh, so if you've got big animals like the axolotls, you can have it fully open and it will just drag all the big muck in. If you've got something like my chili rose borers and you want to block them off, then you can run that. That is fairly fine, so I don't think much is going to get in there. That's a neat little design, that. So yeah, you just turn it, and depending on how much you want it open, that then slots in the top, so that's fairly simple. Yeah, that will float, I assume, or I hope so. And that's that. Obviously got a cable clamp here, so you can run the cable up out the outside of the aquarium. That's going to suction cup in there. Job done. I suppose the pump's in the bottom. Yeah, our pump's down there. So does that come apart? That should pull off. Yeah, and then into the impeller, which every now and again you'll need to give that a quick clean. Nothing too exciting though. There you go. You can see how the flow reducer works. Look, just blocks off part of the impeller. And then up inside there, oh, you've got your foam, look. So that's just a bit of foam that stops the muck going down into the main pump itself. So yeah, a fairly simple design, to be honest. Like most skimmers are fairly normal and fairly simple. You know, there's nothing too exciting about them. Yeah, perfect. Well, let's go and plug this in onto the axolotl tank and see if it's flooded yet. Hopefully it's not. I left it on very slow, so hopefully, fingers crossed, it's still filling. Good job I caught that, because we are literally at the brim. I didn't even have time to turn the camera on. I was going to do a whole thing of like pulling the hose out and getting rid of it, but didn't have time for that. I literally got down here just as the water was getting to the surface. So, well, that's that. We can now get this skimmer plugged in and see, hopefully, if it makes a difference. I'm thinking with all the changes, some bigger water changes, less lighting. I'm going to change the light settings in a minute. And this extra flow, I think we should be good. You know, this little skimmer turns over, I've stuck it to the light. So this little skimmer turns over 400 litres an hour. So in theory, on a good day, it will be turning this tank over once an hour, which over the course of a day is quite a lot of flow. You know, it's surprising how a little pump like this can mount up over the course of a day. So as I was saying, you can see this plastic rim that's inside this shaker tank. So that holds the light units on. So hopefully, obviously Fluval have designed this with this funny sort of kicked out bit that means it will go around most of these trims. Like I say, I can't think if all the skimmers are the same, but I've got a feeling I've got a cheap one upstairs somewhere that would struggle to be stuck into a tank like this. So if I just suction cut that one down to there, oh yeah, I think that's going to work perfectly, look. And that can float up and down freely and miss this plastic trim, which is ideal. Right, I suppose the next thing is to get this plugged in. So let's just check. That's floating, cables out the way. I'll tidy up the cables in a minute. But let's plug this in and see how much of a difference it makes to all that small duckweed. Can you see all this small duckweed? This stuff is obviously, it's dying back quite a bit because of how much nutrients the Vallis is using up. But we have still got a slight problem with duckweed. So let's turn it on and see how we get on. And we're off. Oh my word. Yeah, that is sucking in duckweed. I don't know if you can see on the surface. Let me grab some from the backlet. That's got quite a draw on it, to be honest. Like if I put some of that there, that is sucking in that duckweed really quickly. Now, obviously, that sponge will clog in the bottom of there, so I will need to change that one or clean it periodically. You probably won't need to change it. But that is definitely going to help with the surface clearing. Yeah, so obviously it's got the flow diverter stuck to the front at the moment. And yeah, that is on full power. So what you saw there was full power. So that would be pumping around 400 litres an hour, which, yeah, is a good flow rate for a little skimmer like this, especially with the size of the pump. I think I might just remove this if I can. Don't know if I can underwater. It's quite slippery underwater, but it will give it a bit more of a sort of jet under the water. Rather than dispersing the water, that's going to chuck the water back up to the other end of the tank. Now, I probably won't need to run this all the time, but the good thing is a lot of the water is being pumped down the back of the aquarium and then coming round, and then this little thing's pushing it back up. So I'm hoping to get a bit of a circular motion with this. And once the surface is clean, then you could get rid of it or possibly put it on a timer if you didn't want to run it all the time. To be honest, it's such a small pump with such a low wattage that I'm just going to run it all the time anyway. I think we should get our boys and girls out for a quick feeding while we're here. So we've moved on to the adult pellets now because, yeah, the junior pellets are just a little bit too small for these boys and girls. But they are doing really well on these adult pellets. They do get a mix of frozen foods in here as well, so they're getting things like bloodworms and things like that. But, yeah, see if we can get our golden one out as well. They have just been fed yesterday, so they all might still be quite full from that. But we'll see if they come out. So these two have come out for a feed, but the others, well, the golden one's back there, wedged in underneath the rock, and the other one's sort of in the cave. You can't really see him. You going to come out of your cave? No? Going to come and join your friends and have some lunch? No, you're going to stay there. Anyway, let's see how this skimmer's performing. It seems to be pumping a lot of water and sucking in a lot of that duckweed. I'm really hoping that this will help with the oxygenation and flow issues we're suffering with this big planted. It's because you guys are really messy, aren't you? Anyway, So it's been going for a little while now and it is still sucking in a hell of a lot of duckweed. I think while it's obviously new and there's a lot of duckweed to get rid of, I think I'm going to have to clean it fairly regularly. But you can see it pulling in all this duckweed really quickly. Now obviously you can adjust this so that that turns around. Hang on, let me take it out. So you can turn that around and block off the holes so it wouldn't then suck in wouldn't suck in big particles. It would just suck in sort of stuff off of the surface. But that's not what we're really wanting it for. Still works, still sucks it in, but it's just going to keep the duckweed on that outer ring rather than actually sucking it down into the foam, which is really what I want it to do, because I want to be able to take that foam out once a day, give it a rinse off, and then chuck it back in. And hopefully over the course of the next week, it will help us get rid of this duckweed, and then obviously it's going to help us remove the nutrient. Well, there we go. This is the first step in me trying to combat the cyanobacteria problem in this tank. I'm hoping that what we've done today will get on top of it a little bit at least. It's not much more than I normally do. Obviously, I've been doing regular water changes. I just don't think I've been doing them enough, maybe, or maybe big enough ones. And yeah, certainly with the amount that axolotls eat and not being able to have any animals in there that sort of sift the sand and break things down. And yeah, I just think it doesn't help, to be honest, the situation. It's always the problem in tanks where there's sort of bigger animals that like to eat. They always get a bit mucky and it's always a bit tricky to try and keep them as clean as you want them. But we've definitely made a dent on it today, and I'm really hoping that little skimmer is going to sort of, well, help churn up the water and help move the water around. Like I say, it's going to move this tank over once an hour while it's clean. Once that sponge starts to block up, then obviously it is going to slow down. But I'll just have to keep on top of it while it's getting rid of that duckweed. And then once it gets rid of that duckweed, hopefully it'll just add as an extra oxygen, you know, pulling that water down from the surface and jetting it out underneath. That's going to give a good amount of flow. I really like the design that Fluval have put to it, where they've obviously indented that back piece to it. That means that a lot of the big aquarium brands, you know, your Jewel, your Eheim, your Fluval, obviously, because they would have designed it with their tanks in mind. All those big aquarium brands that do plastic lids and have little bits of plastic, this skimmer should fit around it, or at least have a space where you can fit it in. I'm not sure if it's the same on a lot of other skimmers. You'd have to have a look or tell me. You know, there's a few different skimmers out there. I did go and have a look at the one upstairs, and it's a very cheap, blocky, sort of boxy looking one, and that sits flush against the glass. So if you've got anything poking out around the top, the cheap skimmer upstairs that I've got, that was just a cheap imported one, you know, no brand name, just a cheap skimmer, yeah, that one doesn't really work on a system like this. So I'm glad that they've thought about that, and I'm glad that that's something that means now that people with lidded tanks with plastic trim can now have a surface skimmer to help them keep their tanks clean. I don't think there's much more information you would need on the skimmer, to be honest with you. It runs at like 3 or 4 watts. I think it's 3 watts. Hang on. 3.3 watts in America, 2.8 in the UK. So let's randomly about 3 watts. So energy-wise, it's not going to consume anything. It's a really small, energy-efficient pump. Yeah, nothing to worry about on that front. So there's not much else to say about the skimmer. It's a good design, clever design with bringing it away from the wall. It seems fairly silent. You've got the dial on the top to stop it from sucking in any small fish. Maybe if you've got really tiny fish or tiny shrimp, it might be a problem, but that's the same for all surface skimmers on the market. There's very few that are completely safe with tiny, tiny animals. Anyway, I'll keep you updated in reels. I've just realised that I put my old man cushions back on my chair. At the start of this video, I took all these cushions off the chair because I thought they looked awful, and they do, but these are my old man cushions that make my chair a little bit more comfier for when I'm editing, so I just realised I've put them back on. Anyway, I just had a thought. If you want to watch the build for this video, you can find that on my channel. I think it's Axolotl Oasis or something along those lines, but there's an axolotl video that I will tag in the description of this video. So if you want to go and watch us, me and Katie, essentially building this tank, however long ago it was, I'll tag that down in the description. And then if you want to keep up with updates on this tank, I regularly post to my Instagram, my Facebook, my TikTok, YouTube community. So just make sure you're following me on one or more platforms, and I will be constantly giving you updates on how everything's doing, or how the animals are feeding, or any of the other multiple tanks I've got living around my house, and also the garage conversion that is starting to pick up a little bit of speed, but I'm yet to tell you about that. So you'll see that as and when a bit more starts happening, you'll see it. I've got a pile of stuff behind the camera that I've got to go and fit into a tank over there now because, well, it can't stay on my floor. then you'll see that video in the next coming weeks. Yeah, I will see you in the next one. Enjoy yourselves, have fun, enjoy the summer if you're in England and it's raining like it is here at the moment. But anyway, I'll see you in the next one.